Mostly, I'm not a big fan of storms, actually. When that crack of thunder woke me up early this morning, it was like, golly. When I was little, I was very much afraid of storms. Now I more fear what they may hold. For they do hold lightning that can destroy, tornadoes that can destroy, and even these flash floods that have been surrounding us these last few days. And the truth is, we all have those storms in our lives and in our loves. One form or another, we all face these kinds of storms. And hardly ever is there a warning that they're coming when they rise up in the midst of life and of love. But when they do, they can rob us of our strength, if we ever had any, and fill us with self-doubt. They can create this paralyzing fear. But there are those in our midst who come to us in the name of the Lord, really, who do what Jesus did for us in the boat that day, who seem in some ways to be able to calm something of those storms when they come. Dads, that's where you come in. You seem so able, at least it seems, to face those storms at least with way more confidence than we do, and way less self-doubt. And you always seemed, at least when we were little kids, to be able to kind of figure it out, whatever the storm happened to be, calming those fears and those self-doubts, and redirecting our bitterness and our regret and our discouragement. But even more sometimes than helping us through the hard times, you helped us figure it out. Figure out how to do it ourselves when we had to face those storms without you. I have a good friend whose name is Don. He'll tell you about himself in just a second, but I want you to know that I've known Don for 45 years. And recently he shared with me 2 stories of fathers that both spoke deeply to me, both about the experience of being fathered and then the experience I've had of fathering. Now, it makes no sense for me to tell you those stories about him when he would be sitting right here in front of me anyway. Plus, he's a way better storyteller than I am, hands down. So I asked Don if he would be willing to share the stories with you in the hopes that they might speak to you of your experience as well, both of being fathered and of fathering all of us. Donnie.
Good morning, everyone. This is an honor. When I was a new father, and we've been married 30 years this July, I remember not being able to sleep. And our older boy, Tim, was a colicky kid. And I was outside this time of the year, walking him at about 2:30 in the morning and trying to let Mary Ann sleep a little bit. And I saw the glow of a cigar across the street on the front porch, and it was Mr. Peters. And he said across the street, "Son, if you think you don't sleep now, you're not going to sleep for 30 more years." He was waiting up for his 2 teenage daughters to come in. Right after our son was born and after the birth of each of our sons, my maternal grandmother, Gertrude O'Keefe, said to me each time she held our boys, "You have no idea how happy you're going to be." And she was right. Both of them were right. I haven't slept as much since I had kids, but I'm more awake now that I have kids. I'm more awake every day to what matters. And I'm more awake to the beauty of my marriage and our wonderful boys. It's also neat. I'm done crying, I think, now that I got started. It's also interesting, as Gary said, Father Gary, this backdrop of the storms. I just taught a class Monday in Wisconsin for my health organization, SSM, on resilience, caring for the caregiver. And I talked to the group about how I had found from research that anxiety gets a foothold in 15 seconds. That anxiety can get a foothold in us in 15 seconds. And I told them I didn't just learn that from my research, I learned it from my life. That I too often let that happen. And so it's so interesting to talk as a father against the backdrop of the storms, because the people who have fathered me have calmed storms in me. And storms of self-doubt and worry and comparison. Just a lot of storms have been quieted. So I want to tell you two stories. One is of my father. My dad died 5 years ago. He went to 8th grade for his formal education. He falsified his age so he could go into the 82nd Airborne in World War II. I have a picture of him that was taken on his 18th birthday. It was his first day jumping in complete gear out of an airplane. And I remember saying to him, "Dad, that was very patriotic." And he said, "No, I actually joined the Army because I didn't want to work for my old man anymore." And he said, "I thought there was nothing worse than working for my old man, and I found out 4 days into basic training there was something a whole lot worse than working for my old man." He married my mom when she was 18 and he was 23. They had 5 of us kids. We lived in a 950 square foot home in Dogtown, right over here. My dad was a truck driver, he was a house painter, and he was a grocery clerk, and he worked until he was 81 years old. My dad also struggled mightily with alcohol addiction. And I don't say that to shame my father, but I say that to remind us that God works in human brokenness and God works in human glory. God works in both places. My dad, in his final days, after a really a struggle with a cancer that ended his life, began to ask me when I would sit with him to write down some things that were important to remember. And I inherited that from my dad. I'm a list maker. I'm so compulsive that when I'm working on things around the house, if I start to fix something and another thing comes up that needs to be fixed, I write it down and line it out so I get full credit for all the stuff that I did. So I'm just as compulsive as my father. But I inherited from him his work ethic and his humor and his list making. So I paid attention when he said it was time to write things down. And he said, "Write down that I want to be buried in Jefferson Barracks. I want to be buried in the National Cemetery. Please write down that there's money hidden in the basement for Mom." And it was a struggle not to share that with my mom and my siblings. He said, "Write down that you kids should help Mom with the house. And you should clean the gutters on the south side of the house more often." He said to give my sisters some pictures that he had. He said to give my brothers his tools. And he said, "Son, I'd give you the tools, but you have no use for them." And he was right about that. And he gave me his shaving mug, and he gave me his shoe shine kit. And this morning I got up early and shined my shoes in honor of my dad. My last conversation with my dad that we spoke to each other was at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he said, "Get out your notepad." And I said, "Dad, I think I can remember what you have to say. You know, I was kind of tired, and I could tell I was getting impatient." And I said, I think I can remember. And he said, no, go get it. And he said, write this down. You were a wonderful son. And in that moment, I just felt so blessed. In the days that followed, before his death, I never could speak to him again. But I really felt a lot of things lift. A lot of things that probably needed to be forgiven and put in perspective on both our parts. And it was a graced time. There's so many beautiful things that happen in silence. So many beautiful things. The other thing that occurred to me in my dad's final days was, for whatever reason, I started thinking about how many men fathered me. My baseball coach, Mr. Messel, John Wickersham, who taught me in college, Father Hugh O'Donnell, who taught Gary and I in school, my own dad, certainly, my father-in-law, Ed, my Uncle Jim. There were so many. I was so blessed. And it reminded me that God makes up for that brokenness in the people who father us and mother us. Who father and mother us. Second story is a really fun one. I was in the Oklahoma City airport for work, and we were delayed by a storm. And it was going to be several hours, so I thought I'm going to grab a soda and go get my laptop and go to work for a little bit. And I was waiting in line to get a soda at the food court. And there was a pizza place that I had a slice and a soda special for like $5.25 or something like that. And 3 soldiers came up and were standing abreast of me. And I heard them saying, I think I'm going to get that. I'm going to get that slice and soda. And I've done this before. I've bought food for people from the Jesuit Volunteer Corps and all those kinds of things when I'm in places where I can tell young people are in transition. And I said, you guys, I'm eavesdropping. Would you mind if I took care of your pizza for you, your soda and pizza? Oh, no, sir, you don't have to. And I said, well, I'm happy to do it. I'm in a place in life where that's not a hardship. Are you sure? And I said, I'd be happy to get this for your group. And this soldier said, well, thank you. And then he turned around and said, you guys, he's going to take care of. And there were 24 more soldiers in line. This is the kind of thing that Marianne says to me when I travel, don't make eye contact with anybody. Just get on the airplane and go to your work and come back. Don't look at anybody. Just go. When that was all taken care of, they were having their food, and I went back to go to work, and several of them came up to say hi and thank you, and I kept saying, you don't have to do that, but the one soldier said to me, you looked really shocked when you turned around. I said, I was, man. But several of them I just asked what I frequently ask people, where are you from? And this particular young man came up, and I asked him a few questions, and I said, what led you to the military? Why this path? And he said, well, my family did this, my grandfather, my aunt, my dad, my cousin. But he also said, this is how I'll pay for my education. He said, I lost my dad when I was a senior in high school. At my high school football game, my dad dropped over, and I lost him. And he said, I feel like I lost him. We say stuff like, I lost my dad, I lost my mom. He lost his dad. And we had an unbelievable talk. It was the best $145 I've ever spent. Haven't you done that? You buy running shoes that you don't run in, or you sport coat you don't wear much, or, I've wasted money like that on things that didn't matter. And, he literally, I remember tears were dripping when he talked to me about his father and about his impact, and even his dad's flaws. And when we got done, they were getting called back. We talked for quite a while, and they were getting called then to their flight. And when he left, he said, I really enjoy talking to an older guy. So we parted ways, and he came back, and he said, I want to thank you for being a father to me for part of today. Just another reminder, we have the capacity to father and be fathered. Doesn't matter our ages. We're fathered in a million ways. Joe fathers us with music. Phil fathers us with preaching. And leading us in worship. My buddy Tom fathers me as a friend. You know, there's just a million ways. So final thought, what I love about being a father is we have a chance to show courage. Okay? Not boxing ring courage and not athletic field courage. I love the fact that the word courage in 2 different languages translates like this: to tell the story of your life with your whole heart. I'll say it again. That's what it translates. To have courage is to tell the story of your life with your whole heart. And as fathers, in a world that is laden with anxiety, and coming from a scriptural tradition in the Hebrew and the Christian scriptures that says over 300 times, do not be afraid, we have the opportunity as fathers to show courage, and we have opportunities to receive the gift of courage from people who tell us through their whole hearts who they are, through their whole lives who they are. So today, if you have your father, be grateful. If your father's flawed, forgive, and look for other places to be fathered and mothered. If you are a father, again, be grateful. Tell the story of your life with your whole heart. Thank you for listening. God bless you.
It's time for our dads to come up. Lynn will do the blessing, lead us in the blessing.